On this edition of Independent Sources, Generation Standby, exploring the struggles of the growing number of young, under, and unemployed Puerto Ricans, and The Heart of Coffee, brewing up a new way of using the beverage in art. The details coming up. Welcome to Independent Sources, bringing you news from New York's ethnic and immigrant communities. I'm Abi Ishola. Puerto Rico's financial woes have been making headlines for months. There have been several stories of the country's inability to pay workers and underemploying their younger workforce. A new documentary called The Standby Generation explores this trend on the island. This week, I sat down with the film's director, Juan C. Davila, for our Film Focus segment. Before we go to the interview, here's a look at the film's trailer.
Para los jóvenes es un reto emplearse y no ser subempleado. Así que el subempleo, por definición, es la ecuación más insultante en la dinámica del trabajo.
Lo primero que me dijeron fue, cuando usted llenó el contrato, su disposición de tiempo es nuestra.
Como soy part-time, pues no tengo los beneficios que quizá un trabajo full-time tenga.
Por la falta de seguridad laboral que tenemos, es bien difícil no poder planificar para tener una familia, ¿verdad?
Los 40 empleos por tienda que generan destruyen 360 empleos de pequeños y medianos comerciantes.
Están invirtiendo, están viniendo a Puerto Rico a llevarse el dinero de Puerto Rico para afuera.
Welcome, Juan Carlos.
Hello.
So for your film, tell us what you mean by the standby generation.
Well, the standby generation is a term I use for my documentary La Generación del Standby, which is to describe the millennial generation that is looking for jobs and is looking for opportunities of employment and is facing really just precarious jobs. The only thing that is available is, most things are available are like temporary jobs, part-time jobs, freelance work. So it's really a generation that has not entered the labor force as with a lot of opportunities of really having an employment that guarantees benefits, that guarantees respect. So the standby generation is what I call, the millennial generation
That are facing these issues.
that are facing these issues, that are entering right now the labor force. I mean, many of them are still like college students. Many of them are young workers right now.
Wow.
Generation that is going to be on the standby for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And just how widespread is this? Is this across the board in the country, or?
In my documentary, The Standby Generation, I really focus on Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican, but this is definitely a global phenomenon. You know, the New World Order, neoliberal politics, global capitalism have all brought this sense of less secure jobs, with the purpose of keeping profits high for employers and for corporations. So in that case, the young people are victims of precarious labor, and not having secure employments because it's making the employers keep profit high. Yeah.
So one of the people you profile, he describes big box stores as a savage system.
Mm-hmm.
What does he mean by that?
Well, it's really a predatory system, really, that is just looking to keep profits high, no matter what. In the case of, for example, Walmart and Sam's Club, they really, which is one of the one of the persons that I profile in this documentary, in the case of Samsung and Walmart, that corporation of the Walton brothers, they really don't care about their employees. They really want to put as much money into the roster and to the payment of their employees, so they can really keep profits high. And as they do, it's how many other corporations also operate. And this savage system that he describes is really a system, that I mean, it's totally not fair. It's totally unequal. You, as much as you keep wages down, benefits low, then you guarantee that your profits are going to be higher. So it's not really a giving back or is really responsible or respectful. It's just using people. And the only difference that it might not seem as maybe slavery in some senses, because in some cases people are really slaves in some jobs, is because they make a wage, and apparently they work for some basic regulatory laws. But all this, but with all the deregulation of labor law that has happened lately, all because employers ask for less rules and flexibility of how to manage their employers so they can operate and apparently generate more jobs. Eventually the consequences is precarious jobs and jobs that do not pay the proper respect to the employees and do not give them the security that people need to live and make a livelihood.
Capitalism at its finest, right?
Yeah.
You show a lot of protesting in your film. Is that an increasing phenomenon in Puerto Rico among young people?
I mean, I think it has its moments. In 2010, there was a big university protest that is featured. That I show some images of it in the film. But I mean, and that was, and the students were very active during that period of 2010, 2011. But then eventually, like it all went down a bit. But they have kept active. Right now, people might be organizing against because there's Puerto Rico has a $72 billion debt, and one of the things they're proposing is an oversight board that in a way would also reduce the minimum wage for young people in Puerto Rico from $77.25 an hour to $4.25 an hour. So so it's this type of people that I talk also in the film, that that they are going to have their wages to be reduced by hour from $7.25 to $4.25, and this would definitely, and a lot of young people, the millennial generation, the standby generation, are concerned. So this might trigger something else, maybe similar to what happened in 2010, 2011 with the student movement there.
Wow. So what do you think some of the solutions are?
I would aspire that a film like this would motivate people to organize and start looking for solutions.
Okay, so where can people see your film?
Well, actually, the film right now is running through film festivals. It has been shown in festivals in California and festivals in here in New York. Lately, it was in the Workers Unite Film Festival. It also was shown in the Havana Film Festival in Cuba in December. So I'm still in the festival run, but eventually the film is going to come out for video on demand. That should be by the end of this year, on video on demand, and we're also looking forward to have educational distribution for it.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
Juan Carlos, thanks so much for being on the show.
All right, thank you.
Still to come on the show, what do a legendary African-American sprinter and stamp collecting have in common? We'll tell you right after this. Thanks for staying tuned. As the story goes, the Olympian Jesse Owens was the first to come up with the idea for a society of black stamp collectors. The hobby was very much white-centric until Owens had a chance encounter with fellow collector Esper G. Hayes at a convention in the 1970s. Owens encouraged Hayes to create the organization for people of color. The Ebony Society of Philatelic Events and Reflections, or ESPER, was born in 1988 and is still going strong. Zyphus LeBron spoke to Manny Gilliard, the organization's previous president, about the hobby and how the organization is staying true to its origins.
Manny, thank you so much for being in studio with us today.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about your organization, the ESPERS, and that stands for the Ebony Society of Philatelic Events and Reflections. And I have a quote here from the news editor at Esper, which is what the magazine is called that covers you guys, Don Neal, and he says the stamp collecting community basically is synonymous with old white guys. And you smile when I say that, but is this true? Is this still true?
It's not true, and in addition to that, because they were the older people involved in stamp collecting in decades gone by, they've got to get new people to come in now. Otherwise, the hobby will die.
Right.
So many other people are involved in stamp collecting. There's a person of African descent who's in Holland, who's a member of our international society, and she collects.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, she's of African descent from South America, but living in Holland right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's going on? Like, there's also a notion that that there are not a lot of African Americans in stamp collecting. What's being done by your organization to kind of address that, to help more people of color enjoy the hobby?
It has been wonderful. We've had people come aboard. We've have groups that are involved in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. Our current president is out of North Carolina. Our vice president is out of California. We have, on an international level, as I pointed out before, one of our members comes from New Zealand, and she came to the International Stamp Show recently. We have a wonderful retired educator who creates booklets relative to aspects of African American history that youngsters would be interested in. So we're doing a lot relative to bringing in new people into stamp collecting.
Mm-hmm. So Manny, it was remiss of me not to get into like the origins of the Esper Society. Tell us why the society was created in the first place.
Well, the acronym of Esper is also the first name of Miss Esper Hayes, who at a stamp show met up with Jesse Owens, who was signing autographs, and he said to her it would be a good idea if she could have other people of color be involved in collecting stamps. Mm-hmm. And so after a year or so, she remembered her obligation to Jesse Owens, and she created the organization. So the Ebony Society of Philatelic Events and Reflections Incorporated, since we are 501c3, was created. And it's odd that the acronym is also the first name of Miss Esper Hayes.
Right, and I assume that was deliberate there, to pay homage to her.
I wasn't
You
back
weren't there
then, so I'm not sure what her endeavor was at that time.
Right. Now, one of the things, we've kind of talked a little bit about it, but one of the things I kind of wanted to get into was this idea of representation of African Americans on stamps. And there was legislation in 1978, the United States Postal Service launched the African American Heritage Stamp Program, which was supposed to create more stamps representative of people of African American descent and so forth. How has that, it's been a while, how has that program really kind of done its job to represent more people of color, more people of African American descent, or issues affecting the African American community on stamps?
Well, at that time, I think it was extremely important because we never knew when a person of African descent was going to come out on a stamp. And so one of our members, and prior to his being a member, tried to get a black stamp to come out on a regular basis. And he went to his politician, who tried to have one stamp come out. And when he had a problem, he decided to fight them. And as a result of fighting them, it was created, the Black Heritage Series. So in 1978, the post office came out with a stamp. And from then on, there was at least one stamp coming out per year. Wow. Relative to people of African descent. Mm-hmm. Now, down the road a piece, we decided, some of us, that one stamp per year wasn't enough. There were also other categories that the post office was putting stamps out into, like maybe music or entertainment or science. And so we said, we have African Americans who are involved in all of those categories. Why not bring out a person of color in those areas? Mm-hmm. In fact, I think maybe 2 years ago, I think about 6 stamps came out of African Americans that particular year.
Right. Because I've seen several of them. I've seen the Wilt Chamberlain stamp. I've seen the stylized Jimi Hendrix stamp, the March in Washington, I believe. But which was that stamp, that initial stamp that you mentioned in '78 that was created? Do you remember?
78 is Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman.
79 was Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. So there have been quite a few. And I think one of the beautiful things that came out with that stamp was the background in that stamp, because you could see her endeavor and what she's, one of the things she's noted for, which is bringing enslaved people into freedom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things in doing research for this that I found was that just last year, it was, I believe in 2015, there were stamps featuring Maya Angelou and the black architect Robert Robinson Taylor. And both of those stamps, I guess by the community, were voted the least necessary and the worst design categories. Those were kind of brutal criticisms of those stamps. What do you have a sense of why that was the case? What was that all about?
You must understand that is a result of a contest. In other words, one of the publications puts out a yearly test, and all the various categories are put out there, and stamps that could go into any of the categories. Mm-hmm. So nationwide, and maybe even international, because the publication itself is not restricted to New York City or to the United States. So when you submit your ballot, you are stating what it is that you are interested in.
Right.
Now, the probability is that maybe a lot of people of African descent are involved in the collecting of black stamps are not participating in that. So if they're not participating, you may be not getting a true picture of it. You're getting a picture of the people who are submitting their ballots.
Right. So in other words, if the majority are not African American, if they're white, Hispanic, or whatever, then it's not necessarily them.
Let me try to correct you.
Okay.
Our organization is not restricted. We have people throughout the diaspora.
Yes.
And so they're not only African Americans. As I pointed out to you, we have a person who is of African descent, but in Holland. Mm-hmm. We have a person who is of European descent out of New Zealand.
Right.
Who, in fact, she came to to the International Stamp Show,
which was held recently at the Jacob Javits Center.
Correct. In fact, she has written a book on black stamps herself. okay? And it was part of her educational situation in New Zealand, where she didn't get a doctorate. I forgot what category she was in at the time.
Right, right. Now, I know that you've brought in some stuff for us, and we have displayed here a booklet that features President Obama. And what was it like when, you know, he became president? Was there like a real outpouring of stamps from around the world with his likeness?
Yes, there was an outpouring, and even though the restrictions have been changed relative to when a person can go onto a stamp. At one time, I think it was approximately 10 years, and then maybe about 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. And now they say you can put a person on a U.S. stamp who is still alive.
Right.
So technically speaking, Obama can go on a stamp in the United States right now.
Right.
But the problem may be that people don't like the idea of a living person going on a stamp. And some people may associate it with, suppose that person does something terrible.
Right.
And you've already got him on a stamp for, say, 2 years or whatnot. And so it doesn't look so great.
Right, right. Because there's never been a living president that's been on a stamp, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Right. Well, Manny, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today, and thank you for coming in to talk a little bit about the Esper Society and, you know, the representation of African Americans in stamps.
I really appreciate it, and the organization appreciates it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There's more to come on Independent Sources, so stay tuned. Finally from us, coffee as a medium for art. A Spanish Harlem artist is finding a way of mixing her love of coffee with her love of art. Judith Escalona reports.
I like the different interpretations of coffee that the artist has created. I also like the color scheme that the artist has chosen. It's a very monotone color scheme, but it still gives a lot of depth and impact to the art that the artist is creating, and it's very pleasing to the eye.
Minerva Gonzalez's exhibition, The Heart of Coffee, is turning heads at a small cafe on 110th Street called Uptown Roasters Cafe. They often display art, but Gonzalez's prints are unusual. She actually paints with coffee.
Me puse a explorar sobre cómo eran esas pinturas y encontré trabajos maravillosos y seguí explorando hasta que dije, bueno, pues entonces esto lo puedo hacer yo. Y empecé a dibujar con el café, a pintar porque ya dibujo, pues antes de la pintura viene el dibujo. So, yo primero empecé a hacer los dibujos que quería sobre café y luego empecé a usar la tinta del café para crear las pinturas de café.
She uses coffee the way she would a more common medium.
El café para mí es el acuarela, lo que le llaman en inglés el watercolor. El watercolor tú lo tienes que mezclar con agua. Pues así mismo yo hago con el café, lo mezclo con agua hasta obtener el tono que quiero.
A discerning coffee lover, many of her images are inspired by the labels of various Puerto Rican coffee brands.
Como soy una adicta al café, que me encanta el café, pues siempre que compro café de Puerto Rico, traigo los paquetes de café y cada paquete tiene diferente envoltura, con diferente diseño y entonces por medio de esos diseños yo creé esos diseños que están en las paredes del café.
Uptown Roasters had only recently opened when Gonzalez approached the owners.
Aparte de que el café que ellos hacen es fantástico, excelente, es tan bueno como el de Puerto Rico, podría decir, casi. Pero los conocí a ellos, me cayeron muy bien y se me ocurrió ofrecerles si querían que yo le hiciera una exhibición y me dijeron que sí.
Her work is just really beautiful in person. I think that when I saw it in photos, I had trouble imagining exactly how she could turn the coffee into such detailed work, but when you see it in person, it really comes together.
The Heart of Coffee will be on display at Uptown Roasters Cafe through July 15. Judith Escalona, Independent Sources.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent minded.